Well, hello and everyone, and good afternoon. Really appreciate you joining us today. Welcome to the Arizona Recycling Coalition Annual Conference 2021. Very excited about this conference as we expect to have a plethora of beneficial information for you. So it's great to have you all here, even though we are kind of in a new virtual world. My name is Todd Blair. I am the current interim chair of the Arizona Recycling Coalition. So on behalf of our board members, I would like to thank you for attending this conference. I would like to begin by introducing you to the current Arizona Recycling Coalition Board of Directors. Our treasurer is Clark Landrum with Waste Management. Our secretary is Karen Jane of Stardust Building. Our grants and scholarships is managed by Ariel LeBaron. She's with the City of Phoenix. Our media is managed by Becky Borquez with the City of Peoria. Our policy chair is Erin Murphy at ASU, and you will see Erin throughout this session as she will be managing the Q&A function. So be sure to say hello to Erin. Our affiliations and membership chair is Jessica Yates, City of Phoenix. Vice Chair Rose King with Glass King, and our past chair is Dylan Lenzen. So a brief overview as we begin about the Arizona Recycling Coalition. We are dedicated to promoting waste reduction, reuse, and recycling efforts through education, outreach, networking, and strong partnerships. And I think you'll learn from today that we aren't just exclusively recycling, even though it is within our name. We are an organization of industry professionals, we're community leaders, students, community members. And I think one of the great benefits of this industry and this organization is that it doesn't just impact our careers, but our community as a whole. So as I mentioned, we are industry leaders, and as you will hear today, most of this organization is in a leadership role within their respective positions. And as a collaborative, as a collaboration, we achieve a broader impact. So through these efforts, we're dedicated to make an impact, not just in Arizona, but nationwide, as we strive to be the resource for your recycling and waste reduction businesses. So we were established in 1993 and have members from every industry sector. We host quarterly member meetings in which we discuss industry news, we discuss issues and try to help provide some solutions to those issues. We proudly award grants and scholarships each year to help promote innovation in reuse, reduction, and recycling. We also present various awards to communities and schools. In fact, the AzRC has awarded more than $250,000 in grants since 1993. So we have grants, and our grants, scholarships, and awards, by the way, the nominations for this year are due November 1st. So we'll be sure to get them in ASAP. We also have a policy group for our members, which is very popular. As I mentioned, chaired by Erin Murphy, which meets the second Thursday of every month. Some other additional benefits of being part of the Arizona Recycling Coalition is that we also host networking events which you can connect with other industry professionals. And we will be distributing information very soon regarding our next event. So stay tuned for the details on that and check our website where we will post that. Any Arizona Recycling Coalition member is welcome to join the policy committee or attend any of the meetings. And you can learn much more about us through our website or social media as we look forward to connecting and participating with you. So please feel free to reach out to us at any time. So now on to today's conference. As I mentioned, we really are very excited for this sustainable material management information that you're going to hear about today. We have a lot of great content for many subject matter experts. So our first three speakers will present for 20 minutes with a 10-minute Q&A session afterwards. As I mentioned, Erin will be managing that. So our first speaker is Damon Carson, and he is with Repurposed Materials. Damon is the owner and founder of Repurposed Materials. And if you haven't signed on for their distribution letter, you should do that. It's very innovative and interesting. So they have yards in Arizona, Colorado, Texas, Iowa, South Carolina, and his company has a very unique business model focused on repurposing waste and obsolete materials from corporate America. Repurposed Materials is actually Damon's second foray into the waste stream of America, albeit with a very different and unique business model. Several years back, he sold a garbage company that he had co-owned in the Colorado ski resorts of Vail and Breckenridge to Waste Management. So with that, please welcome Damon Carson.
So thanks for the introduction. So we're going to start with a magic show to talk about durable materials getting a second life. So I'm going to show you a waste stream of big industry, and then we're going to do a little hocus pocus and turn it into something else. First up is the big mining tires, very Arizona in nature, 10 foot, 11 foot, 12 foot tall, typical wear part, like a car tire. But what do you do with these at the end of life? Maybe again, since you guys are in Arizona, some of you may know, but one good repurpose, hocus pocus, is you slice it in half like a bagel, fill that concrete or that center hub with concrete, and you have a second life, a stock tank that will last 50 to 75 years out in a cattle pasture. So again, first life, second life. Next up, this is Cal Berkeley's gym floor. Gym floors in the United States are sanded various amounts of times. Typically high school floors last longer. College floors, because of branding and design and stuff, often get sanded every couple of years to present a new look. But there's only so many sandings you could do left before you get to the tongue and groove part of the maple, and it becomes obsolete. Usually these end up at the landfill, but a little hocus pocus. You cut them out in 4x8 sections, hocus pocus. And if you notice really closely, this feature wall, the back wall of this bar, you can see where they took it apart board by board and reassembled it. You can see the 3-point lines, the free throw lines, the out of bounds lines kind of all get reassembled, not as they were, but presents a fun, whimsical design. This happens to be the back bar at the restaurant of one of Michael Jordan's in Chicago. So again, a very different second life for an old gym floor. Next up is these street sweepers. Everybody in the audience is probably familiar, have them going through your residential areas of town, commercial districts. But what we're specifically talking about is the tube broom, the red one between the front axle and the rear axle. Interestingly, they start out about 36 inches in diameter. It's a wear part. So those plastic bristles slowly get whisked away. And when they're about 22, 24 inches, they become too small. They don't reach the ground anymore. So they can't flick the dirt off of the streets. The plastic bristles have recycle value. The steel pipe in the center has recycle value, but unfortunately there's not enough value in either one to expend the labor dollars to cut the bristles off and recycle the metal, or vice versa. So many municipalities across America just end up landfilling them, but hocus pocus, they become a great back scratcher for livestock. Zoos, dairies, in this case, horses, but again, giving a productive second life to what is obsolete to the street departments of America. So those are some big industrial repurposes, and sometimes you kind of get wigged out with the enormity of these, but when you were a kid or you had little kids, the Quaker Oats oatmeal. So let's go down to residential, small scale. This round cylinder, cardboard cylinder, meant to protect oats from factory to store to home. But when the last oatmeal was gone, did that ever get thrown right in the recycle bin? Probably not. All kinds of craft type projects you can make out of this in a second life or a repurpose. The Maytag refrigerator box, again, first life, very thick cardboard, meant to protect the refrigerator from factory to home, or factory to store to home. As a little kid, or when you had little kids, did that ever get cut up and sent right to recycling? Of course not. Hocus pocus, all kinds of things you can do. So it's interesting how we start off with big, huge 10-foot mining tires, but this whole concept of repurposing, is really something we're all kind of familiar with. In small scale, big scale, it's all the same concept. So we often get asked, is this repurposing thing something new, something unique? In fact, it's not historically. So let's look at these big parachutes. These are military parachutes, and this is not what dropped the soldiers, but the big rations. This is World War II. In Italy, we won the war. The DOD, the Department of Defense, the Army decided not to bring back all the parachutes back to the United States at the end of World War II. They left them. Very enterprising olive grove farmers saw those, decided, well, let's cut a little slit in it and put it out like a tree skirt under a Christmas tree. And so when we shake the trees, the olives fall down, we can lift the sides, and all the olives channel to the middle. So again, we talk about repurposing, it's not new. So here's something from the 1940s. Let's skip ahead a couple of wars. So these are the F-4 Phantoms that flew sorties in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam era. So what we're looking at is the thing that looks like a bomb on the underside of the fuselage, but in fact, it's a external fuel tank. So this would allow the jets to penetrate farther into enemy territory because they had a little extra fuel, but these were one-time use. They would hit the eject button when the fuel was gone, and these would drop on the jungle floors of Southeast Asia. Left to rot. Of course, they're steel, so they won't rot, but in the jungles of Southeast Asia are littered with these. Hocus pocus. What do they need in Southeast Asia? Lots of rivers, lots of tributaries, lots of creeks. So they would take these justs and fuel tanks and make them into canoes. Been told by several people who've been there 50, 60 years later, these are still in use today. So a very productive second life. So we're all familiar, especially in this audience, with reduce, reuse, recycle. Reuse is probably the least loved of the reduce, reuse, recycle, but let's use a boat, a forklift, and a refrigerator. There's a used secondary market for all three of those, but in a second life, what happens? A boat stays a boat, a forklift stays a forklift, and a refrigerator stays a refrigerator. They don't really get repurposed. Again, those are specialized things. So repurposing is an offshoot. I don't know that it's a stepchild, but it's an offshoot of reuse. So let's talk about some familiar. So these are probably things you've already seen and are so familiar that you don't even really think about them being repurposed. Old wine barrels, hocus pocus, you cut them in half, they become planters. Lowe's, Home Depots, Menards, etc. Again, been around for decades. Old tires, now in Arizona, a dry place, kind of like Colorado, where I'm standing today. Not so much, but if you go out to big rivers, the Ohio River, the Mississippi River, the oceans around ports, you know, they're used as fenders or bumpers on tugboats and piers and stuff. So again, it's not why Goodyear and Michelin made them, but they get a productive second life. The big 20-foot and 40-foot ocean containers. If there's HGTV watchers, again, first life meant to import, export materials and different products. Productive second life for these, hocus pocus, is tiny houses and many other things give it an extended. Again, we put this under the category of familiar repurposes. Probably all three of these you've heard of in one form or fashion. Now let's talk about some less familiar. So these are the big advertising signs. Again, McDonald's decides they're not doing the daily double for $1.99 anymore, and they go back to full price. This big billboard, just printed on vinyl waterproof fabric, becomes obsolete. Hocus pocus. An extended second life as in this case, a tarp to cover building materials. They make great slip and slides in a second life, all kinds of fun things, pond liners to give to these billboards in a second life. These are the aluminum bleachers that probably many attendees, watchers of this program have sat on watching kids, grandkids, their favorite sports teams. ADA reasons, a lot of times these get torn out or they decide to upgrade to more fiberglass actual chairs instead of the plank bench seatings. Generally what happens to these all get scraped off with excavators and they get sent to recycling and melted down and made into a soda can or a beer can. Again, nothing wrong with that, but for those in the audience, most of us are familiar with the waste hierarchy. Reuse is always better than recycling. So hocus pocus, a very enterprising architect needed an interior wall cladding. So decided to, rather than have these melted down and made into something else, why can't I just use them as is? So these are the big military parachutes. We talked about the olives already, but again, all kinds of fun things that you can do with old parachutes. Hocus pocus, this is a Shakespeare theater in Wisconsin, used in a second life one of these parachutes as a shade screen for, again, the outdoor venue. So how do we get the crazy ideas? So we call it substitutionary thinking. What are you trying to accomplish? Or maybe on the other side of the street, other side of the state, other side of the nation is a used material that could do the same thing. So wire ropes, Sling and Technology News is a trade magazine that if we were in a live audience, I'd ask for a show of hands, and almost nobody is a subscriber to this magazine. But interestingly, here is an ad. Here is a sock material sling guard protector. So you got the high value sling lifting these very heavy steel coils. There's that right angle that cuts into the sling. So this company makes brand new a sock or a sleeve to take the wear to get the abrasion instead of tearing into the high dollar sling. So here are companies making a sock or a sleeve brand new. Where in America are tens of thousands of feet of sleeve-like materials that are very tough, very abrasion resistant being discarded in America? Kind of a hocus pocus. Fire departments discard thousands, tens of thousands of feet of fire hose every year. You think about how tough and how thick these are. Why can't we, instead of sending them to the landfill, cut them up into 3 foot, 6 foot lengths? And again, maybe substitute them for these sling guard protectors. So again, with repurposing, not always does it work, but you just try to have that mentality. So here's another fun trade journal, Poultry USA. This is for the chicken farmers in America. If you look really close at the gray thing in the middle, that's called a nest pad. So this is literally 1.5 inch shag carpeting. The hens in all their cages spread out, lay their eggs. So they want something when the egg falls out of the cage, they need something cushiony so the egg doesn't crack. So this company makes 1.5 inch shag carpeting to do, as the name implies, be a nest pad. Where in America are hundreds of thousands, probably millions of 1.5 inch plastic shag carpeting being discarded, being landfilled every day in America? Hocus pocus. Football fields, soccer fields, the new generation of turf is about that, 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. So again, could it be substituted as nest pads? The answer is maybe, but again, trying to think outside the box for all these waste streams we generate. So what makes a product or a material a candidate for repurposing? We have this little SAVE, Save It grid. So the first is standardized. The more standardized or uniform a material, the more it's a candidate to get a very different second life. We have a pile of wood. So if we have a pile of random lumber, 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x8s, 22 inches, 44 inches, 87 inches, that's a big mismatch of sizes and types, not standardized, versus the one industry that buys 8 foot 2x6s and they have 22 inches left over because they need to cut 22 inches off of every single 2x6. So their whole waste stream is 22 inch 2x6s. Then you've got a chance to find that other industry somewhere in America, then maybe they use 19 inch 2x6s. So again, standardized and uniforms. Next up is availability. Is this a one-time waste stream or is this recurring? We think about the mining tires in Arizona. Probably some of you deal with this. That's a recurring waste stream. All the copper mines, as long as they're running haul trucks, they're going to be eventually replacing tires. So, and again, it's fun when you find that second life, that repurpose, knowing that more materials are coming on the back end. We call it availability. Next up is versatility. We actually use this in conjunction with 3 words when we work through what is a candidate for repurposing. Generic, versatile, and adaptable. As you sit in a room at your home, the chair you're sitting on is probably very specialized. It might be leather, it might be upholstery, it might have a foam pad, steel, wood, very specialized. But there's other things. Probably the room you're sitting in probably has a door. You take the hardware off, you take it off the hinges, and that door is generic, versatile, adaptable. It could become a shelf, as an example. So it's interesting when you show something that's generic, versatile, adaptable to different industries, they could solve different problems. This is a roofing paver, flat on top, corrugated or fluid on the bottom. These are on many, many warehouses across America. They become end of life. They're done with them. You show this to a landscaper in a second life, hocus pocus. He looks at it flat side up, something that you can walk on, stepping stones in a backyard application. Interestingly, though, you show it to a livestock owner. He looks at it completely opposite to solve a different problem. He wants that corrugated or fluted side up to act as cleaning or traction for his livestock so they don't slip and fall in the muck and the mire that they create. So again, if things are generic, versatile, and adaptable, all kinds of things you can do with them in a second life. Third or fourthly, engineering, we actually, again, use it. We say ACE, ACE, attributes, characteristics, and engineering. What did the product do in its first life? And maybe we can find another industry that's, again, looking for those attributes, characteristics, and engineering. Was it magnetic? Was it hollow? Was it UV protected? Was it waterproof? All these things that made its first life what it was can maybe be a second life. So let's go back to the mining tires. So anybody raised on a ranch knows you put a galvanized metal tank out there the first week, a 1,500-pound bull decides to jump in the tank and have a little 8-second rodeo. And your tank can be ruined after only 1 week in operation. Attributes, characteristics, engineering. These mining tires have 2 and 3 inches of steel and rubber put in them by Goodyear and Michelin, not to be a great water tank, but to hold up in a very abusive, heavy load mining environment. It just so happens that 2-inch and 3-inch of steel and rubber makes them a great stock tank. A 1,500-pound bull can jump in there. His 1,500-pound brother can jump in there. They can have an 8-second, 30-second, or 60-second rodeo bucking and kicking. And that attributes, character, engineering just flexes a little bit. They get tired. They jump out. Your stock tank is still intact. Attributes, characteristics, and engineering. Another fun one is these big rail cars. These are flat rail cars, big I-beams spanning the axles in the railroad industry. They actually call them the trucks. But again, a lot of times at 30, 40 years, these get cut into 3-foot, 4-foot chunks and melted down, and then they become a car bumper. But what exactly is happening here? You got big I-beams spanning these trucks or axles. Hocus pocus, if we just remove the axles, the trucks, you have all the elements of a bridge. So rather than melting it down, cutting it, sending it to a mill in Chicago to be made it into a new I-beam and then shipped to Alabama, can't we just leave it as is? Again, one of the things we talk about a lot is the substitutionary thing. Lots of DODs would not approve this, but for a farm road, a forestry road, a BLM, again, outside the box, can we keep this rail car as is and just repurpose it? It's, again, obsolete as to the railroad industry, but doesn't mean it's obsolete to all industries. So as I said, this is a fun candidates, what we talked about, the SAV, the candidate. So just because something's a candidate for repurposing doesn't mean it's going to be commercially viable or commercially successful. These are hot air balloons. You're one state away from the most famous balloon rally in Albuquerque. It works through the grid perfectly. Save it, standardized, they're available, they're versatile. They have neat attributes, characteristics, and engineering, just like the parachute. But for one reason, parachutes will have a good secondary market, but hot air balloons will not. The reason being, they absolutely reek at end of life. You think about the shade tarp at a Shakespeare theater. If it smells really, really bad, who's going to want to sit under that watching Shakespeare when there's odor permeating from these old hot air balloon fabrics? Again, interesting idea, but not commercially viable. These are the inflatable slides. Every jetliner, and I think it's every 24 months, these get replaced. American Airlines, this is their hangar in DFW down in Dallas. They have to replace them. FAA mandates. I looked at that and I thought, man, that is an instant speedboat thing to pull behind a speedboat, a party barge on a lake. Man, this would be great. A zookeeper wrote into us, hey, these would make great fall pads when we anesthetize the big animals. You tranquilize the draft, they fall over. You don't want them getting hurt. So generic, versatile, adaptable. Two different industries look at it the same way, but good candidate for repurposing will never be commercially viable because FAA rules is they have to be certifiably destroyed. They don't want these ending up on third world airlines. There's a reason the FAA deemed them to be retired. So again, it's kind of frustrating, but kind of understand it all at the same time. Escalator handrails, we've all touched it 1,000 times. This is one of those. The most common repurpose idea for these is landscape edging. like in your garden and stuff, but you think about, and I don't know if my pricing's accurate, but you got galvanized metal edging at Lowe's, Home Depot, maybe it sells for 20 cents a foot. You can't even ship this for 20 cents a foot. So it breaks down economically. So again, just a fun, quick overview. I'm running into the time for Q&A. Often we get asked, does repurposing make more sense environmentally or economically? Of course, for corporate America, wanting to keep stuff out of the landfill, repurposing makes sense. It gives them extended life. For anybody that buys used, whether you buy used cars, used clothing at a thrift store, used durable goods, you typically save 50 to 75% over buying new. Repurposing, said another way, is at the intersection of affordability and sustainability. And with that, I will hand it back over for the Q&A portion.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. So I just made an invite to attendees, but feel free to just post your questions for Damon in the chat, and then I'll read those out. And Damon can give a verbal response, and I'll type a response so that you also have kind of a written record of that. So we'll give you a few minutes to think about what questions you have.
I'll take this. I'll answer a question that hasn't been asked. Todd mentioned we just opened a branch in Arizona in Fort Mojave, Bullhead City, south of Vegas. So we just opened that a couple months ago. So we now have a physical footprint in Arizona. So we're excited.
Congratulations. That is really exciting.
I think if I may take liberty, Erin, while you're waiting on some other ones to write in, I'll just jump in person and ask one if you don't mind. So,
of course.
Damon, does your team I think it's amazing what you do. My first question is that you have a foam nest for eggs. Do you have one for bacon? That was just kind of a part 1A type thing.
There you go.
My question is does your team collaborate? So in recycling industry, we would use terms like supplier and consumer. You have a supply side that's generating material. You have a consumer side that's processing the material for its next life. Does your team tend to collaborate on both the supply side and consumer side, if you will, simultaneously? Or what does that process look like?
Yeah, so somebody sends us, a material that's obsolete to them. I mean, we bring it in, the grid showed you the SAVE. So then if it's generic, versatile, adaptable, we say, hey, we're willing to take a risk. We bring it into one of our warehouses across the country, and then we're willing to take the gamble and sit on it. We don't simultaneously try to line up an end user for that, because a lot of times it takes time to talk about it for people to have projects. So our warehouses become that holding point. Then we begin to advertise it. One of our insider things is, if it's generic, versatile, adaptable, we're willing to take possession of it, take the risk. But what we don't know, is it going to be the cranberry farmer in Wisconsin, the copper miner in Arizona, the golf course superintendent in Florida, who's going to figure out what to do with that waste stream. And that can take 2 weeks, it can take 2 months, sometimes it takes 18 months to find that second use. So kind of an indirect answer to your question, Todd, it takes time, and we become that holding place, that reservoir. So unlike in traditional recycling, the steel's coming off of the demo job, and the steel factory is ready to melt it tomorrow. It works a little differently with the used model.
Fantastic. And we have two questions, so I'll ask them together, from Becky from Peoria. So she asked, are manufacturers accepting of the idea of repurposing? Some believe that it costs more to repurpose than to buy new. What are your thoughts on this?
So I'd answer it, I'd come out 2 different ways. So, companies are very much open to, they just want to keep it out of the landfill. Now, again, certainly I think a lot of them recognize reuse versus recycling, but at the end of the day, they just want to be able to tell their shareholders or consumers that we're keeping it out of the landfill. Where repurposing sometimes does not appeal to corporate America is from a liability aspect, just like the FAA says all inflatable evacuation slides have to be shredded. A common thing is a lot of the reasons why corporate America loves recycling so much is because you have instant brand destruction, and the liability, the chain of custody and all that is broken as soon as you send it into the grinder. Well, as we've shown you many examples of, we keep it as is. So there are, our bullet doesn't fit everyone's situation. I mean, we don't solve all the problems. Here's what we can do with your materials. Then they have to decide if that's something that's acceptable to their lawyers or whoever's making the decisions.
Fantastic. So Jessica from Phoenix asked, what is your favorite reuse project managed so far?
Oh, a fun one. I think it's kind of one of my favorite repurposes is this is several years ago. Comcast Cable reached out and they had a bunch of concrete pads, 4 inches thick, 4 foot by 4 foot, and they had holes drilled in them. And so these, for them, they had these concrete pads. They would place them out in a new subdivision, housing subdivision, and they would run the conduit from their big transformer to provide cable to each house. But they changed their formats. Here's waste. I looked at it. Hey, it's generic, versatile, adaptable. Let's bring it in. Surely somebody can figure out what to do with these concrete pads with holes in them. That one did not take that long. A motor freight company calls and bought everything we had. And I, as part of the way we do it, what in the world are you doing with a bunch of concrete pads with holes in it? Well, they said, well, we happen to be Denver based and we take loads to Wyoming. When you take light loads, meaning not much freight to Wyoming on windy days, the trucks can blow over. So we want to buy these concrete pads, no longer good to Comcast Cable, to literally add weight, add ballast to our truckers on windy days when we have light loads. So again, rather than grinding up this concrete, rather than landfilling this concrete, it had value as is in a very different way to a second industry.
That's a really cool example. I've definitely driven on some windy roads in Wyoming, so that makes sense to me. So
now the old joke is we've never seen a limp flag in Wyoming.
So Michael Kazz asked, any ideas for repurposing or reusing shipping boxes such as Amazon's on a larger scale?
Yeah, so probably, and again, I'm assuming he's talking about cardboard boxes. One of the things that you run up against right there is, well, two things come immediately to mind is there's probably not a lot of standardization uniformity because every box tends to be, for shipping reasons, they make it as, design it for their specific product. So there's probably 100 different sizes, which is always a real challenge, back to standardized and uniform. The second one is just economics. Can we ship a cardboard box from California to our warehouse in Arizona, and then, you find a second market for it in Arizona? The economics might fall apart. The guy in Arizona could buy a brand new box for that same price. So, those would be my two off the cuff skepticisms. Again, said a couple paragraphs ago, repurposing certainly doesn't solve all the problems. It's a piece of the pie. But oftentimes, like with the street sweeper brushes, it's a piece of the pie that there really are no other viable keep it out of the landfill options.
Fantastic. So Leslie Fox asked, on your staff, do you have people who are thinking of ideas to then reach out to a buyer?
Yep. So I'll use the same little scenario that I said before. So contrary to popular belief, we don't have a repurpose and development staff and R&D staffs. We just take risks on materials that are generic, versatile, adaptable. We show them to a broad audience, multi-industries, multiple zip codes. And then we just wait and listen for those industries to see them and have that aha moment. Back to the concrete example of in Wyoming with the motor freight carrier. We use trucking all the time. So I'm very familiar with trucking. I could have stayed up for 3 weeks, 24 hours a day, and I would have never, ever, ever thought about using these as ballast to keep trucks from blowing over in Wyoming. But when a motor freight company owner saw them, it was an instant solution. So we just put them out there, and all these enterprising, resourceful people figure out how to apply them to their own industries.
Fantastic. Thank you. And that's time. So you have a few follow-up questions from Todd, but he'll have to talk to you directly. Right. Otherwise, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure to hear your presentation, and I'll pass it back to Todd to introduce our next speaker.
Damon, thank you again. Great stuff as always. And I've started to write down an encyclopedia of things I'm looking to repurpose. So I'll definitely follow up for sure. So thank you very much for joining us today, Damon. Always appreciate the presentation. So next up, we have pleasure to have Gary Liss from the National Recycling Coalition. And Gary is kind of just getting warmed up in the recycling industry with 47 years of experience. So Gary is a leading advocate of zero waste and is a coordinator of the Recycling is Infrastructure 2 campaign. He's a vice president of the Zero Waste USA and past president and lifetime honorary board member of the National Recycling Coalition. He's also served as on the town council and was mayor of Loomis, California. So Gary, really appreciate you being here. Looking forward to your presentation. And everyone welcome Gary Liss, please.
Thanks so much. I'm getting my presentation up, and can you all see it?
We can, thank you.
Great. So the Recycling is Infrastructure 2 campaign began earlier this year in the spring. As the new administration was coming in, there was emphasis on trying to address infrastructure. The initiation was by the Institute for Local Self-Reliance with Zero Waste USA. They invited in the National Recycling Coalition that formed the steering committee to work together to launch this campaign. We have a Google group now, Recycling Infrastructure at googlegroups.com if you want to connect in and participate in the discussions. greeneducation.us has been providing support in helping to organize some of the activities. Early on, we asked people who were at the table in Washington, D.C., negotiating and lobbying on behalf of waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting. And our theory was we weren't the ones who were at the table, but there were lots of friends who were. And whether they were all working together and enhancing each other's message was part of our premise that if we could coordinate all those that are already at the table, rather than hiring our own lobbyists, that we might be able to amplify the message and have it go viral, hopefully. So our initial effort was to invite about 50 or 60 of those targeted businesses, and we got 10 of them to join on as a part of the campaign. We started with a letter to the president and vice president in March. National Recycling Coalition used that as a basis for a change.org petition. And then NRC led the development of the American Recycling Infrastructure Plan to be clear about what our message is. When people ask, what are you actually talking about? That's what's in the plan. A key message in that plan, with all the talk about infrastructure projects, is that for all infrastructure projects, it would be great if they included as eligible activities the use of reuse systems, recycled content, and compost products. That's a message that no one else had come up with before. It's one that we encourage people to strongly advocate for. Can you imagine if all the infrastructure investments that are about to be made included compost products and landscaping, recycled rubberized asphalt and road construction, all these repurposed and reused products for helping in infrastructure projects? It would be a really amazing impact and increasing the demand for the products we want to reuse, recycle, and compost. We drafted the plan at NRC, circulated among the steering committee, then among the larger 50 or 60 groups that we were working with. Got good feedback that we needed to differentiate between the physical and the social, because we heard that there would be some that would support the physical infrastructure, but not some of the policies and programs that would amplify the physical investments. So that's how we redesigned the American Recycling Infrastructure Plan to correspond to those interests. We did an analysis of the amount of jobs and reductions in greenhouse gases that would come from that. And July 15th released the plan. July 27th, we had a webinar that highlighted the details of that plan. And we've been doing monthly webinars since May on different topics. August focused on a national bottle bill, which was one of the recommendations of the plan. And in September, we had a great webinar on what's in the infrastructure bills for recycling. And part of the presentation today will be highlighting what those items are. We got some really good media coverage, particularly in May, June, and July from trade journals when we sent out releases about what was going on here. When you get the copy of this presentation, these are all linked that you can find those articles. The plan itself has 50 initiatives recommending $16 billion over 3 years be invested in reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting initiatives. The composting numbers were much lower than you would expect because most of the composters that we were working with were working simultaneously on the introduction of the compost bill in Congress, and they were holding their numbers close to their vest. So as a result, we didn't get them into our plan. Our plan built on several other plans that had been introduced by the Recycling Partnership, by World Wildlife Fund, by a variety of other groups that had come up with plans for infrastructure. And we tried to integrate all those inputs into our plan. It includes 10 grant programs to local governments, 10 grant programs for small businesses, a grant program for MRFs, and a focus on federal departments, what they could do to invest in waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting. On just a sampling of the 50 initiatives for reduce, we looked at EPR for difficult to recycle products, pay as you throw in federal contracting, redesign grants for products, replacing single-use plastics with reusables, and increasing disaster debris waste prevention. For reuse, we looked at the infrastructure using reuse systems, like I mentioned earlier, and federal agencies besides just the infrastructure money using reuse systems, reusable foodware, water refill stations in national parks, a wide variety of reuse activities. For recycling, we built on the Recycling Partnership recommendation for residential investments in infrastructure to fund 38 million curbside carts around the country with different targeted areas for those. Funding redesign of MRFs and redeveloping them, particularly to deal with problem areas like batteries that are burning our infrastructure down around the country. Some of the softer policies and programs that would support the infrastructure were standards on plastic chasing arrows, labeling on containers, market development campaigns, establishing standards for national recycling training and internships, and buying recycled and compost products. In the composting realm, we focused on building demand for compost in federal contracts and the use of compostables in infrastructure projects, expanding federal tax deduction for food donation. These were some very specific recommendations on food that were in the World Wildlife Fund recommendations for infrastructure. Also strengthening liability protections and tax credits for farmer food donations. Unlike some of the other infrastructure plans that have been promoted to be funded through a variety of mechanisms that are under debate still, we propose our own suggested ways to fund these programs. A national green disposal fee of $20 a ton on landfills and incinerators was one of the recommendations that would generate $3.6 billion per year and would shift the economic calculations and make reuse, recycling, and composting more economic in comparison to disposal. That's actually the bottom range of the $20 to $40 a ton that were implemented in Europe 20 years ago when the EU adopted the EU landfill directive that required the phase out of organics from landfills. Each nation in Europe adopted fees to help fund that phase out of organics from being landfilled. And the range of the national fees was $20 to $40 a ton. We did a project in my consulting firm working on a project in Waveney, in the United Kingdom, and there it was about $40 a ton landfill surcharge, which made everything look way better than it looks over here for the economics of that project to proceed. Other ways to fund the initiatives would be fees on non-recyclables, the national tax on single-use products that are not designed for reuse, recycling, or composting, following the plastic pack designated non-recyclable or non-reusable categories, and with the revenues dedicated to this plan's plastics initiatives. Some of the next steps for the campaign are for the campaign to ask the network to contact your U.S. Senator and Congressperson. You are in a very important position with Senator Sinema from Arizona, being a key person in all the discussions right now in Congress. We ask that you communicate the message that recycling is infrastructure too. And could solve many challenges, including climate change and job creation and social environmental justice, at the same time as investing in domestic recycling capacity to offset the challenges that came from the China national sword. Focusing folks on recycling as infrastructure too is the simple message and title of our campaign, and making sure that your congresspeople, your senators understand that that's important to you, and to consider that is something I urge, and the National Recycling Coalition and the campaign urges you to embrace as soon as you can, individually, collectively, as the organization, following the lead that Todd mentioned at the beginning of this program, that you want to have an impact on national activities. Here's an activity on a silver platter for you to run with and right now to have an impact on this. And at a minimum to at least include the following as eligible activities for all infrastructure projects: the use of reuse systems, recycled content, and compost products. The good news is that infrastructure bills that are moving in Congress have been influenced by other recycling entities, and many of the partners that we've been working with, either formally or informally. The bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed the U.S. Senate in August with a vote of 69 votes in favor, the $1.2 trillion INVEST Act, includes $275 million for implementing the Save Our Seas 2.0 Act that was adopted and signed into law last year. That includes $15 million a year for 5 years for recycling grants, and $15 million per year for trash-free water grants, and $75 million for recycling education and outreach to state and local governments, a whole variety of folks, on particularly messages about contamination and recycling right. One of the more exciting things that's in their bill is up to $3 billion for battery manufacturing and recycling grants, and another up to $3 billion for battery R&D. With the battery, the current battery problem burning down our infrastructure, our collection vehicles, our processing facilities, our MRFs, our composting facilities, our landfills, This is a really serious problem, and one that's going to be growing over time, particularly with the emphasis on electric vehicles coming down the pike. So it was great to see this in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and look for more details on that. In the Build Back Better budget reconciliation bill that is now pegged somewhere between 1.9 to 3.5 trillion, there's also language about $750 million in grants to state and local governments, nonprofits, and partnerships for reducing waste, organic recycling, reuse, market demand, reducing landfill disposal. That number is probably more likely to change as the reconciliation bill advances further, and we'll be seeing and monitoring closely. It's another reason why it's important to do right now, contact your congresspeople and let them know that you're interested and what specifically you would use money for. The more specific you are, the more that they can understand that there are projects that you need funding for. It will help. And you can tell them that you have suggestions on how to fund some of these initiatives that are in the America Recycling Infrastructure Plan. There's other related bills that have infrastructure components to them. They're not all focused on infrastructure only, a wide range of subjects, but these are the Compost Act, that establishes a U.S. Department of Agriculture-led grant and loan guarantee program to provide another $2 billion for a range of composting facilities and programs. The Zero Food Waste Act has been proposed to provide planning, reduction, and measurement grants as part of that. And the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which you've probably heard about, with leadership from your state involved with that. The grants for reuse and refill pilots, extended producer responsibility, and a national bottle bill would all fund investments in recycling. Some of the details on those are highlighted here. I'm not going to go through all these details. I included the next couple of slides in here for you to take a look at after the presentation, and to follow up on that. These slides are from the webinar that we organized in September with people who, again, are at the table in DC lobbying every day to get these things done and adopted, and they need your help right now. We're on the verge of a major breakthrough in a new federal partnership with the state and local governments and industry to invest in infrastructure, with recycling being part of that. The Compost Act provides for equipment, physical needs for the facilities, on-site composting systems. You all know that 80 to 90% of the cost of any waste and recycling system is in the haul. So if you do it on site, you save that 80, 90% of the money that you've been paying to haul things away. So that's a really great example of a great investment in the future, and as well as funding for collection programs. The Zero Food Waste Act is coming from the World Wildlife Fund as one of the key leaders on that, and some other major national organizations. World Wildlife highlighted the planning grants, reduction grants, and measurement grants that are part of that program for the Zero Food Waste Act. In the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, I mentioned the different types of grants and investments that could come out of that. It also includes a moratorium on plastic production facilities and environmental justice reviews of chemical recycling facilities. This is just an example of some of the information that will be available through other national conferences that the National Recycling Coalition is working on organizing right now. Next week, November 3rd to 4th, is our first full National Recycling Congress, first time in 12 years. We have over 100 speakers at that conference with 3 different tracks, doing it in partnership with the State Association for Reduction, Reuse, and Recycling, NISAR 3 in New York. And we've got over 200 attendees, over 100 speakers already, and hope that some of you will be able to join us if you haven't heard about it before. Also, the National Zero Waste Conference, NRC is a partner in organizing that on December 8th and 9th. Zero Waste USA is taking the lead this year on organizing it. National Recycling Coalition organized it last year. They've got another great group of speakers focused more on zero waste for those who are on the cutting edge or want to be in the lead on setting the stage for way more focus on redesign, refusing materials from being wasted, and reducing, reusing before recycling and composting the rest. So that's the Recycling as Infrastructure 2 campaign. Happy to answer any questions, and appreciate Arizona being a part of the national efforts that the National Recycling Coalition is working on with state-affiliated recycling organizations to communicate your concerns, your issues, and your desires to national leaders, so they understand the importance of investing in waste reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting. And thank you for the opportunity of being here today, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Gary. So while people get a chance to kind of wrap their head around this and think of their questions, obviously, as Todd said, I'm the policy chair for our state level policy efforts, and I'm curious kind of the role you see state level and municipal level policy in this space, and in the role it has is in informing national level policy. Like, is there a relationship or interplay between those things?
Definitely is. Our industry is the quintessential bottom-up approach, that the experimentation is going forward at the local level first. When enough of the locals do it, then the states figure out how to do it more consistently throughout the state. And the more that the states do it, provides more pressure on Congress to act. Plastics is probably a great example of that, where that's bubbled up with the plastic bag bans, plastic fees on bags, single-use product bans, and phase outs, and focus on reusables. All that's percolating at the local level. Colorado just did a great job of getting rid of their preemption of local governments being not allowed to adopt those things they had in law. And with the combination of the state recycling organization working with environmental groups, where there's lots of energy and enthusiasm and connections, they got rid of that preemption and got a statewide bag ban just in the last legislative session, which will be highlighted next week at the National Recycling Congress. So the locals percolate up to the states percolate up to the national. The national real focus on the plastics is because of all that activity at the local level. At the same time, we've got a representative government. They do want to hear from you, and they are monitoring what's going on. We've been in touch with a number of staffers in Congress, and they know exactly what California has adopted with the change in labeling, the chasing arrows, with the minimum content, the first plastics minimum content bill in the country last year. This year, the labeling change. They know what's going on around the states, and they want to hear from you, not only what you've done, but what you'd like to see done at the national level. The staff are hungry for information, and I am really impressed with the quality and professionalism of the staff that we've dealt with. And we're not dealing with them nonstop. So they're, the folks that we're coordinating with are the ones who are lobbying. Our challenge as the National Recycling Coalition is to get the state affiliates and other recycling organizations to be building support for all the things that we highlighted in this presentation. So send a letter in tomorrow to Senator Sinema and say recycling is infrastructure too, and we'll send you more details later. But just get that message out. The timing is critical right now. Each day makes a difference. Each letter will have an impact.
And I'm actually hosting a letter writing event this afternoon for.
All right.
So if anyone wants to crash that, they're welcome to.
Fantastic.
So we have a question from Todd, and he said, "It's been my experience that the issues with compost is operational challenges. Is there a part of these proposals for compost facility funding that addresses material quality and specs by mitigating contamination?"
Definitely. A lot of the issues with composting is not only the technology, but the incoming material, and having clean, source separated streams is critical to the success of getting clean outputs that are marketable for the highest and best use. At ZWIA, the Zero Waste International Alliance, which I'm on the board of, we have a policy paper about composting and anaerobic digestion, and highlighting when to use which. And one of the messages in there is clean in to clean out. And that anaerobic digestion, as an example, is actually just another pre-processing for composting, because from anaerobic digestion, you would still have 30% digestate that needs to be composted ideally. And that whole flow will be improved if you're being careful about what's going in. So that leads to what is compostable, and there's and that's where the legislation about labeling in California is such an important one to be focusing on, because it's defining, if it's not compostable in a certain amount of time with certain characteristics, then you cannot label that product as compostable. And that will have an impact in the marketplace that we think will be very significant. As far as the types of technologies for composting, again, I'm a big believer in on-site compost systems as one of the best things for college campuses, institutional settings, corporate campuses, large industrial facilities, as a huge opportunity. The first priority for food is food rescue. In the California bill, we have a requirement that 20% of all the materials that are organics going to landfill need to come out for food rescue, as part of the goal of getting 75% of all organics out by 2025. So focusing first on food to people, food to animals, and then composting and anaerobic digestion are the hierarchy that EPA has spelled out in the food waste hierarchy. In terms of the technologies for the composting, I believe there's going to be a shift over time, particularly the more urban the area, the more enclosed you're going to be seeing, with ag bags and other types of aerated static pile configurations more so than the windrows that were characteristic of particularly yard waste composting. As food and food contaminated paper is added in, we'll need a higher level of control to minimize emissions coming from the composting facilities. And the more urban it is, to minimize the odor that might be coming if things aren't going exactly right at all times. So there's, and that's why this federal investment in composting infrastructure will be critically important, because it'll take away some of the risk associated with businesses investing in upgrading the technology. And ideally, if we all are smart about this opportunity, if and when this money comes through, if we invested in pushing the state of the art of the technologies and refining them and finding different applications for different types of streams, I think that'll be a great use of the infrastructure dollars. So it's not just money for your standard stuff. It would actually help us advance the state of the art of technology.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic.
Go ahead, Erin.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll pass it along to Todd. And I just wanted to address one of the questions in the chat that was posed to the host and panelists, but I think many of you may be interested in is, will a copy of these presentations be made available? And the answer is yes. And we're recording this, and we'll make sure to share the recording as well. So you'll have a copy of the slides and of whatever it's saying. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Todd.
Yeah, I definitely encourage all of you to get in touch with Erin. She does a great job on that committee and our policy committee. And Gary, thank you so much for the wealth of experience and knowledge that you have. You know, a few more years after 47 years, it's my turn to something. So great information. And not so ironically, we actually discussed the food waste issues. We presented a feedstock presentation at our last annual conference. So I want to thank you again for being here with us today and giving us that information. Next up, we have JB Shaw from Arizona Department of Economic Quality, ADEQ. JB has a lot of surnames: JB the Great, JB the Recycling Guy, my buddy JB. You'll understand all of those nicknames after you listen to him. But JB has worked as a recycling coordinator for the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality for 8 years, and he's been a member of this association, the Arizona Recycling Coalition, since 2015. And he was an integral board member for this organization from 2016 to 2020, and is a SWANA member, has been a SWANA member since 2016. He has SWANA certifications in managing recycling systems and managing compost programs. In his previous life, JB taught youth about recycling for 13 years as an employee. So I'm looking very forward to your presentation, JB. Welcome, JB.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Todd. All right. So, hi, everyone. I'm JB Shaw, Recycling Coordinator for the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, or ADEQ. And I plan to definitely talk to you about recycling. I'll give you a hint of recycling at the end, but I definitely want to touch on those other two R's, reduce and reuse. So today I'll be under reduce. We'll talk about EPA's Sustainable Materials Management Program, the ADEQ Pollution Prevention, or P2 program. We'll talk about a new sustainability toolkit that a couple of my interns developed. And we'll take a look at one of the videos in the Biggest Reducer video series that I've been working on. Then we'll move on to reuse, and we'll talk a little bit about materials marketplace, which sounds a lot like Damon's repurposed materials. So maybe there's a conversation that needs to be had there. There's also an idea for a reuse resource center. And then if you weren't aware, there's a great resource out there called reusearizona.org. So I'll touch on that a little bit. And then we'll talk a little bit about a grant that ASU and ADEQ were awarded for looking at hub and spoke regional recycling. So we'll first start with reduce. So sustainable materials management takes a look at the entire life cycle of a product and looks for reductions in the everywhere before end of life. So any way that they can reduce in materials and extraction, manufacturing, distribution, that's what they're looking to do. So a lot of the priority areas, the built environment, construction and demolition is a big part of that, makes up more than double the amount of MSW landfilled in the United States right now. And I know that Stardust Building Supplies and City of Phoenix have a great voluntary deconstruction program that they worked on together. So that is definitely coming in Arizona, and their EPA has regional deconstruction meetings as well, which are great to attend. There's also the sustainable food management. So, there's a lot of food waste. We were just talking about that, and how can we manage that better to feed more people than animals and on down the line. So that will be, that is something they're very interested in. And, packaging has just gotten all the headlines lately. We saw extended producer responsibility bills pass in both Maine and Oregon. Packaging is definitely being looked at, both paper and plastic. And, we've all probably received, like, we order something online, it's really small, but comes in this huge box with all these plastic pillows or crumpled up paper. And just, there's got to be better ways to obviously right size all that to make it work. Or, do we need to put a box in a box? Could we just put a box in some sort of reusable container to transport somewhere? So definitely a big topic, and something that is a big part of sustainable materials management. And then other emphasis areas, e-waste management. I know of at least one e-waste recycler that in their secondary market, so when they get products and then they resell them, they actually have set themselves up with a right size packaging machine. So cutting those boxes just right for what they're trying to sell out there. So if they can do it, I'm sure some of the bigger companies are able to do that as well. So it would be great to see more of that. And but e-waste is very important. We know we mine a lot of those metals here, a lot of those things necessary for electronics. So rather than put more strain on the mines, how about we just continue to reuse these products that, take them apart, reuse the metals inside. We have some great electronics recyclers in Arizona doing just that. So definitely a great place we should be looking at. And then measurement's always important. You always need that data to back up what you're doing. And then, as I mentioned, life cycle assessment, that's what this is all about, looking at the entire life cycle of a product. Now, ways that we can get involved, some of the partnerships. There's the Food Recovery Challenge, which I myself is an endorser for ADEQ for that program, where we work with grocery stores, restaurants, and cafeterias. So if you're a business, if you're still in the office and not at home, then, and you have a cafeteria, that could be a potential place you could look for food recovery. So definitely keep that in mind. I had an intern create a couple of different guides. One was for school food waste prevention, and the other is restaurant food waste prevention. And that restaurant food waste prevention is concentrating a lot on the economic benefits for a restaurant to participate. And we worked with Local First. They have a great entrepreneurial restaurant program. And my intern was able to present her findings to that group and then offer our services to help those restaurants out. And so, we're trying to get that out. Those two guides, the school and restaurant food waste prevention guides, we'll probably make it mid next year, and you'll find out why, but those have been pushed a little bit, but definitely resources we want to get on the website. WasteWise, another great program for businesses if you're wanting to do more around your waste. So, check that program out as well. And then there's some great tools and resources involved in the program. Some of you probably already know about some of these, like the facts and figures about materials, waste, and recycling. Great report EPA puts together on all the different commodities. You've got the waste reduction model to turn all your recycling efforts into greenhouse gas emissions reduced. The recycling economic information report. I know there's some of you on today that would love to see one of these for Arizona. So would I. I would love to have one of these. And what I've been looking into is the cost of these, and they run pretty much anywhere I've found from $100,000 to $500,000. So that would take appropriating funds from the recycling fund to pay for a report like that for Arizona. My other idea is maybe there's a way to get some interns working on this to get, at least some sort of economic information report together. So I haven't given up on this idea and definitely want to get this done. It just may take me a little time. We also, ADEQ participates in the state measurement sharing program with EPA. So I send out surveys the end of January every year to cities, counties, and tribes. And I'm very thankful that a lot of you return those. And so I'm able to provide data to EPA around all of your great efforts. So that's been going strong for a while now. I think ever since 2013 when I started, I got us into that. And then there's plenty more tools. And then Energy Star Portfolio Manager is a great tool, not just for energy, but they've included waste and water into that now too. So it's a great tool. They put out training sessions for it all the time. So if you're not registered with that, I would go on EPA's website and register for that. So ADEQ's P2 program, this is facilities that are required to be in our P2 program just due to the amount of hazardous waste or toxic substances that they generate. And as you can see, 2019, great year for those facilities. They're required to come up with goals each year on how they're going to reduce, in many areas. It could be energy, water, or waste. And you can see what they were able to do just in 2019. And all of that work goes to those cost savings, which all those facilities realize those savings and continue to do that great work that continues to save them money and reduce their consumption. And so we created a new sustainability toolkit for small and medium-sized businesses. We saw, all these great facilities in our pollution prevention program realizing, great cost savings due to their sustainability efforts. So why not help out our small and medium-sized businesses? So that toolkit is what has pushed my other toolkits or guides further out, but that toolkit is hopefully going to be done in January and ready to go. Our thoughts were this could be a great resource for green business programs, chambers of commerce, economic development departments, you name it. We will be trying to share it out there as much as possible. And it really goes through assessing your impact, going through various audits that we provide you with in the toolkit, identifying stakeholders and how you go about doing that, setting goals around, waste, materials, transportation, emissions, water, energy, just you name it. We give you lots and lots of ideas, whether you're a small, medium, or large business. We also emphasize tracking your progress and making sure that you start with small pilot projects. Those pilot projects they're important to start at a small level so that, if anything goes wrong, it's just a minor thing versus, once you're ready and it's successful, then you can build it out for your entire facility. And then we have a lot more resources in there, including a template to help you track your efforts if that interests you as well. And I've been working on this, the biggest reducer series. I know we have a lot of communities that still do not have recycling or have had to cancel their recycling in our rural communities. And even our, our communities that have recycling, who are big pushers of reduce and reuse, have been utilizing these videos. So these have been a lot of fun for me. I'm hoping for a season 2 coming out next year. We will probably be animating those because we no longer have our videographer, who was amazing. But we do have other staff that are talented in other areas, including animation. So look for those coming next year. But I wanted to play this one video for you just to give you a taste of what they're all about if you have not seen them yet.
Hey, it's JB Shaw, Recycling Coordinator at ADEQ, again to provide you with the next step in your pursuance of becoming the biggest reducer. Single-use beverage containers come in all types: plastic, aluminum, paper, glass. In the US, only 50% of aluminum cans are recycled, less than 9% of plastics, and only 26% of glass. These low recycling rates, along with the fact that 8 million tons of plastic ends up in the ocean each year, means we need to be the change. Get yourself a good reusable container and take it with you everywhere. Buy bulk items to reduce single-use containers and support reused and recycled options whenever possible. A great example of buying reused and recycled are wine bottles that are turned into glasses. This gives that wine bottle several more years of life before it needs to be recycled. There are even gadgets on the market today that can help you reduce your impact. Water filtration systems, home carbonation products, and even refillable jugs. These simple changes to your everyday habits will set you up to becoming the biggest reducer. So tune in next time when we show you some great solutions for paper towels and napkins. And as always, reduce, don't produce.
All right. I hope you all enjoyed that. Let's see. Can I get to the next slide? It's not moving. Let's see. Oh, there we go. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in on that. I have really had a lot of fun on those, and hopefully you'll go to our website and check out the remainder of those that are there. So with that, reuse is been a big topic too. We heard about Damon's great program with repurposed materials. And I'm so happy to hear that's in Arizona in Bullhead City. So welcome. And but we've been talking about a materials marketplace idea for a little while now. I was able to have an ASU student do some work on that as well. And so here's some examples of what a materials marketplace could be handling. So, we had a manufacturing facility that diverted, 100+ drums of heptane acetone, saving them $16,000 in disposal fees. A chemical supplier that had 6 pallets of potassium hydroxide that was able to give those to another company to use in their process. So some great ideas here. And, hopefully, I know ADEQ, due to statutes, is not really able to host one of these, but maybe there's some way we can work this out with repurposed materials, or even with some nonprofits in Arizona, which right now it looks like Treasures for Teachers, Stardust Building Supplies, and AZ Strut have been looking at a potential reuse resource center with repair cafes and fix-it clinics. So I'm hoping that we'll see more of that into the future and see that come to fruition. The reusearizona.org website, definitely one you should look at. If you're a business that does this, you may want to see if you're eligible to be on this website as well, and use their contact us there below. So make sure you're pushing this out there so people do know about some of these options. And then Grecycle. So I know I'm at time just about, so I'll go through this quick, but it's very exciting that ASU and ADEQ were awarded this USDA grant to look into the feasibility of hub and spoke regional recycling for Northeast Arizona. And so we'll be looking at Pine Top as a potential hub, and then surrounding communities as spokes. And we're going to try and include the tribes as well as the very tiny towns all the way up to the bigger cities, and see what we can do to see what needs to be done to make this feasible, because a lot of our rural communities have struggled to sustain programs. And we think that this hub and spoke model, which our neighbors in New Mexico have utilized for a long time and have been successful with, could potentially really help our rural communities. And then when it's fully built out, and not quite fully, I didn't do the entire state, but this portion shows you kind of the hubs where everything's brought, the spokes where there's collecting going on and they bring it to the hubs. And then you've got these red dots as end markets. So potential micro factories, incubator accelerator programs to really grow our recycling businesses, so they can just pull that material right from the hub and turn it into a new product. And there's very little transportation going on. We see this happening, this type of idea happening in Phoenix and Tucson now. And it's definitely one that I think we need to spread all over our state, because we definitely could use some end markets. And we're also looking at more circular economy work through some work at Arizona Forward. Myself, Erin Murphy's on my team with that as well, and we're working on circular economy of plastics. But there's other groups working on construction and demolition, organics, and electronics. So with that, thank you guys so much for having me. And remember, reduce, don't produce.
That was fantastic. And we already have one question that came in. So this is from Todd, and he's asking, do you have options to help smaller volume generators with metrics and reporting?
Options for metrics and reporting. As far as, like, is he referencing like what I was talking about with the toolkit, or because we probably would have ideas in there as well to address that. But
Todd, do you want to jump in and clarify your question at all?
Yeah, so just something that basically provides, if you're looking to measure what is your waste diversion and cost reduction, based on what your program has done. So you've implemented certain reduction programs within your offices or within your facility. Do you have, sometimes you may not know how to best measure that, as far as, what the impact might be environmentally, economically, from a financial standpoint within your organization. I sometimes find that sometimes the metrics can kind of be somewhat of an inhibitor.
Right. No, I that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, I always recommend the Energy Star Portfolio Manager as kind of a good start, because you can baseline against other similar size and type businesses as well in that. So that is a great tool. And when our toolkit comes out, we will have some options as far as ways to track all the different goal areas. So ways to track emissions and water, energy, transportation, all that stuff. My interns put in various metrics that we recommend tracking in those areas. So yeah, those will be coming with our toolkit as well.
So similar to like a warm model, where there are a lot of, you can track procurement side, all these other things. So sometimes that can be, kind of intimidating.
Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree. Yeah, that's a tough one to, we're always trying to track something and, are we tracking the right thing? Does that make sense? And, a lot of people have questioned whether tracking, weight isn't a good way to do it. I mean, there's a lot of talk about measurement and that's good because we need to figure out what the best way to measure everything we're doing is so that we can better communicate that to those that we need to inform.
We have another question, which is, are you looking to expand the circular economy program for Northern Arizona, or why is Northern Arizona not a part of that map?
Oh, the only reason is just because I had started working on that one side and I just didn't want to make it all crazy. So no, we definitely in the grant, we plan to look at all of Arizona as part of that. We're going to be reaching out to a lot of people across the state, all my recycling family. We will be reaching out to you. We'll be doing a lot of surveying and questioning just to gather the data we need to put this out there and give the best resources as far as how we can get more circular economy going around the state. So yeah, that was just because that side I had just started and then it connected, and I didn't want to put it on my GIS team to do the entire state. So I still need to work on that, but that is didn't have anything to do with not including any of the grayed out areas. We definitely want to do stuff with everyone across the state.
Fantastic. And our next question is from Todd, which is, how can I audition to be an ADEQ actor? So
I could use a great actor to be with me on camera.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I
Todd,
was
you'd
not
be
going to ask
perfect.
that question myself. I wanted Erin to ask it for me.
Oh, you're the best, Todd. I love your questions.
Do we have any other questions for JD or JB? Otherwise, we can transition.
Perfect. Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you, JB. Fantastic as always.
Good stuff, JB. JB, you've always been a great resource for a lot of different people, certainly some that I even know in the industry that you've worked with. And so we really appreciate all of your efforts and all of your work. And thanks for being here with us today as well. So
my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, so moving along. So as I mentioned before, here at the Arizona Recycling Coalition, we want to be active, impactful, and collaborative, also known as ADEQ. So, okay, probably not the best acronym, but we reached out to our membership to highlight what others in the community are doing. Wanted to give them the opportunity to be able to present that to you. So we put together what we are calling the Rapid Panel. And so it's kind of like mud wrestling, but without the mud. So each of our next panelists will race for the prize to answer your questions at the end. So our next 6 speakers will present their information to you. They'll have 10 minutes each, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end of all the presentations. So first up, we are happy to have Scott DeFife with the Glass Recycling Foundation. Scott is very involved. He's the president of the Glass Packaging Institute. He represents North American glass manufacturing industry and is all things glass. So with that, Scott, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Todd. And hopefully I'm sharing my screen well, and will do my best to go quickly. In my 10 minutes, I'm Scott DeFife. I'm the president of the Glass Packaging Institute. Very happy to be with you. I'm also the president of the Glass Recycling Foundation. Our trade association is the companies in North America that make the glass bottles and all of the supply chain inputs that go with that, including recycled glass. A quick note to JB before he runs off too much is that I'm hoping he puts a glass bunker at that hub and spoke, and we'll work with him to get the glass to the end markets. What we've been doing over the course of the past year is working on supply chain studies and strategies to get the recycled glass back to the container plants. This circular future for glass study is really hands-on, built around our plants to get the material back to plants so that we can increase the national recycling rate for glass from 31% to 50% over the course of the next year, and meet those federal goals for recycling all commodities at a 50% or higher rate. I always like to flash up a map because a common myth is that there's no end markets for glass in the United States. And aside from the 45 or so glass manufacturing plants that all need recycled glass cullet, there are activities, fiberglass, MRFs that do glass really well, MRFs that take glass, are all over this map, including facilities in Arizona and nearby that are other suitable end markets for the recycled glass. I've also got Arizona green here in Colorado, your neighbor to the northeast green, because we're actively working on projects in Arizona, and I'm going to talk about one of those next. As Todd mentioned, I'm also the president of the Glass Recycling Foundation. The foundation was started 2 years ago to really pull across all the industries that use recycled glass, not just the container plants, but fiberglass and the other end market uses, to support expansion of glass recycling across the country, especially in communities that need it, and to help solve some of the issues in getting the glass back into the supply chain. One of the things that we had identified in our supply chain study, a place where a lot of glass goes, that we think we can successfully divert and add thousands of incremental tons of recycled glass a year, is from the commercial bar and restaurant area. Residential recycling has its challenges, of course, and we want to do that better. But the commercial space, especially bars and restaurants that are heavy in glass, a lot of times that glass is going straight to the landfill. We don't even have a chance to get it. So working with Glass King, which is a Phoenix area company and a member of the Arizona Recycling Coalition, we've put together a program to help collect that glass from bars and restaurants, get it back to processing, and return dividends and donations back to the Glass Recycling Foundation based on the tonnage of glass collected through the program. We have a little video, but because we're short on time, I'm not gonna, well, let's see. I don't know if I can play this, Erin, and make it work, but let's give it a shot.
I'm not sure why, but the audio is
that working? No,
we can see it.
The sound's not coming. You can see
No.
it, but you can't hear it. Okay, let's skip it really just gives a quick 30-second version of how the program works, and I can walk through it with a couple more slides here, right? So bar and restaurant, we will provide the metrics. We are measuring all of the glass that's being diverted from each location away from landfills, and we're collecting that data, and we will return that data to you, including some marketing support. And Glass King is a full service collector of the glass, and will come out and do a site visit for you, recycle that glass bottles, and give you reports on how much glass is being diverted. It's also going to save the bars and restaurants money off their waste bill, because a lot of their trash services are measured in the number of pulls or volume of material that's going through. And if we're collecting the glass, especially in glass heavy commercial establishments, I can very easily, a regular size restaurant that has a lot of beer in glass, or wine or spirits in glass, can easily be diverting a ton of glass a week, and that can make a huge difference in the waste stream and in the waste management bills. We've got We've got collateral material that we'll talk about, that we can provide to the restaurants. We have a website set up on our GPI website that you'll notice here it says Chicago. Also, we've been working all summer on a pilot in Chicago to take the Don't Trash Glass campaign from the Phoenix area where it started to Chicago, and it's been very successful. 50,000 pounds of glass, over 25 tons of glass from 12 establishments in 8 weeks. But you can contact us through our website or don'ttrashglass@gpi.org, or Rose King of Glass King Recycling right there in Phoenix. You can reach her. This is her contact information. We come through with the inside bins, the outside container bins, collateral material in English and Spanish for the staff, and we'll really work with you to make sure. In Phoenix, the program has been sponsored by Crescent Crown, which is a beverage distributor in the Phoenix, Maricopa County area, and anyone who signs up for the program in Phoenix right now is getting 3 free months of glass recycling. That is it, and I'm trying to meet to my 10 minutes, and I'm looking forward to questions later.
All right, well done, Scott. Appreciate it very much. So next up in the rapid panel, all the way from the city of Tucson, we have Cristina Polsgrove. Cristina has been the public information officer for environmental services since 2004 and has worked in communications and public outreach for over 25 years. Cristina, thank you for being here today.
All right, so I have a very short presentation, but I just want to show you, kind of how we went from our landfill to the renaming of Los Reales to a sustainability campus. And so in September of last year, the mayor and council in Tucson adopted an emergency climate action plan. They declared an emergency and established goals of 50% waste diversion by 2030 and zero waste by 2050. So that was really the catalyst for making the name change. We wanted to be able to get on track for meeting those goals, and we looked at our current assets, one of which is the Los Reales landfill, and see how we can maximize that asset today. So if you can see this picture, it's an aerial of the landfill. The landfill is 1,200 acres, more than 1,200 acres in area. The original planned area development for that was to use the external part or the perimeter areas as a buffer, and then the waste area is this area here. We have our administration building and our HHW, but you can see it's pretty much a blank page. I mean, we definitely have room to grow, and it will fit really well with what we want to do in terms of our zero waste plan. So the renaming took place this last summer. We are currently developing a zero waste plan. Our department has been charged with doing that. So we wanted to look, kind of long-term and short-term on how we can use the landfill. As a landfill, we are permitted for the next 60 to 70 years. So, we're in good shape in terms of our waste diversion and waste disposal needs, but we really want to move the city toward the zero waste goal and start thinking about how do we use it as a foundation piece for having other options for disposing of waste or diverting it, actually repurposing, reuse, and not just burying everything. So that was part of the catalyst. And there's 3 different strategies we want to look at. So we want to maximize our opportunities to look at energy use. Currently, we are in the process of developing a new landfill gas to energy program. We had one of the first ones in the state, and we had been sending it the methane, the landfill gas, to Tucson Electric Power, where they would use it instead of coal to power homes in the Tucson area. That contract ended, so we have been flaring it, but we are in the process of developing a new system for what we're going to do with the landfill gas. So whether we will use it to generate power for our fleet, as we, because we have a 100% compressed natural gas collection fleet, or if we will be just using it locally through the existing pipelines and working with Southwest Gas. We also have a compost facility that we were permitted for in the last year, and we are using that to compost food scraps from commercial businesses. We're going to see how we can grow that as well. We've already put in place some solar energy at the landfill for the structures that are there. Excuse me. And we also removed glass from our curbside program, and we have it stored at the landfill right now, and we purchased a glass crusher, and the intent is to use that locally in construction or other things. Another piece of the plan for the landfill is to work with entrepreneurs who are using whose business is based on sustainability practices and then reuse or repurposing of materials. So for example, we've already spoken to someone who uses crushed glass to make pavers and other things. And the idea would be that we would give him space to work there and, just kind of provide some seed money, not really money, because we're not going to be giving anybody money, but giving them space so they don't have to go out and rent someplace. We are also in the process of putting in a tree nursery, which will support the Tucson million trees. And then again, the idea just being that we're going to allow businesses to maybe set up like a last chance store or something like that, so we can start repurposing materials locally. And then the other thing is to, the long-term goal for most closed landfills is to use them as some kind of open space. We would like to explore how we can do that now rather than 30 years, 70 years, 100 years into the future. Okay, and here's just a concept drawing. So you can see this is the area that we were talking about in terms of our waste. We want to put the nursery in this area, and the kind of any stores or entrepreneurs that might be selling product. We'd like to be able to put them out here so they're not on the intense working area of the landfill. Here's where we're doing the composting and the glass over here. So, as you can see, we have a lot of space that we can use into the future. Okay, and that's about it. We have a lot of things in the works. We are looking at other options for us in terms of our glass reuse. As Scott meant, Scott was talking about the things that they're doing. We're really interested in how that might work for our commercial customers, because right now The only way they can do it is if they want to drop off their glass at one of the drop-off sites that we've set up for residents. And not every business has time to do that. So we're really looking forward to how that might work out. We are just, looking at all the different ways we can explore repurposing and reusing rather than landfilling. And we really want to grow those alternatives for residents and for commercial businesses as well. Thank you.
All right, Cristina, thank you. You're very, very busy. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Sure.
Next up, all the way out in the city of Mesa, which I think it takes about the same amount of time to get to Mesa as it does to Tucson from Phoenix. We got Lauren Whittaker. Lauren is a special project manager for the city of Mesa. Lauren, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, I have quite a few slides. Thank you for having me today. I'm going to try and run through it pretty quickly. So we have a food to energy program that we started several years ago, and we did a feasibility study. So I wanted to run through the results of the feasibility study. The idea of the program is that we would collect commercial food waste, and then we would take it to a pre-processing facility to remove any contamination. Then we would take it to a wastewater treatment plant. In this case, we have the one at Northwest over by Cub Stadium that has excess capacity. It's an anaerobic digester that'll process the food and the wastewater into biogas. We looked at the option of making renewable natural gas and using it to fuel vehicles for its heating value, or to run electricity, so run generators to create electricity. We would then clean it up, put it into our natural gas utility, use it to fuel our collection vehicles, and go pick up the food waste from businesses and close the loop there. So Mesa is kind of uniquely positioned because we do have a fleet of compressed CNG natural gas vehicles that for our solid waste fleet. We also have our own wastewater treatment plant that has excess capacity. And what is more rare is that we have our own natural gas system. So not all municipalities have that. So that does put us at an advantage for this program. I won't run through all the benefits, but currently we're avoiding, so if we use the biogas in a different way, we're avoiding flaring it, we're avoiding taking food to the landfill, et cetera, et cetera. So our feasibility study, we started in 2018 and we finished in 2020. We were looking at the operational, technical, and financial feasibility of doing a program like this. AzRC did help us with a small grant to get some equipment, so thank you, AzRC. We also worked really closely with Arizona State University. We tried to collect food from several different partners. So we had United Food Bank, a public school. We tried to get different types. So like a grocery store versus, you know, a Sheraton where they would have banquets and things like that. So you can see the containers that we collected food in, and then on the right, kind of what the food came in. So obviously meat day was a lot smellier than donut day, but we definitely collected all different types of food. We found that all of our partners were really enthusiastic. We had minimal contamination. This kind of gives you an idea of our food waste composition there, the majority of it being produce. And we looked at all the different feedstocks and developed a food waste collection service model. So this is what it looks like. We would take the food, take off any packaging, and then we would hand grind it or use this grinder here to create a slurry, which kind of is that in that blue bin there, it looks kind of like we would call it a hummus texture. So it would come out thick like hummus. Then ASU would take samples of our wastewater treatment plant and then samples of the food, and they made these bench scale digesters. So on the right-hand side, you'll see those liter bottles. They're actually a mixture. There's mini digesters, and they're calculating all the biogas and all different parameters off of those. So the results of that, we established different safe operating parameters and identified any warning indicators for digester problems. We did note that the composition of the food can significantly alter the digesters. So inside those digesters are microbes, and we have to make sure they stay at a certain pH and temperature and everything so that they can break down the food waste. So we did note an increase in biogas production up to 40% just by adding the food waste. And we came up with an initial design for our pre-processing facility. We also looked at our gas system needs and interconnection there and what we would do to monitor the natural gas that came out. And then the last major part of the feasibility study, we looked at our financials. So it was very in-depth models that Arcadis provided, our consultant provided to us, included payback period and sensitivity analysis. And we ended up presenting this to council in January or February of 2020. So moving forward, with the renewable fuel standard, which is with the EPA, you get an incentive to use biogas in transportation fuel. So we're looking at phase 1 of the program, which is just to take what we're currently flaring at the water treatment plant, clean it up to natural gas standards and inject it into our natural gas system. Getting all that infrastructure in place is kind of our first step. So that'll supply about 50% of our solid waste fleet annual natural gas consumption. It's currently in design. We're at about 90% design right now, and we're hoping will be completed by summer of 2023. And then in future phases, we're looking at working on a pre-processing facility so that we can so that phase is no food, just upgrading the biogas that's currently being flared at the water treatment plant. So it's just using the biogas from wastewater. We are looking at a pre-processing facility so that we can start processing food waste. We're looking and then introducing it into the wastewater treatment plant. We're also evaluating other wastewater treatment plants that we own to see if there is excess capacity or if we can capture biogas from them. The part of what's holding us back from doing food is the enormous capital expense. And when you add food to the digesters, the incentive is reduced from the renewable fuel standard. So City of Mesa, we have been working with the Department of Energy and EPA and the National Renewable Energy Lab and ASU, and having a lot of discussions about how we can fix or solve that problem. So that's one major barrier we're working on to get food into our system eventually. And I think that is it. Thank you so much.
Well done, well done. Good job, City of Mesa. That's awesome, Warren. Thank you. All right, next up, we have Tyler Eglen from Arizona State University. He's a staff member at ASU's Walton Sustainable Solutions Services. And I will just say that it's complicated as far as the rest of it. We're actually a little above schedule, a little ahead of schedule, Tyler. So instead of 10 minutes, you can have 11 and a half.
Oh, I'd appreciate that because I'm going to be rushing here. So I will start my timer, stick to my 10-11. So I'm going to be talking and introducing you all to a Precious Plastic at ASU, which is a student organization. So a little bit different storytelling here, but then also how this evolved into an initiative that we're calling the Walton Microfactory at ASU. All right. So like he said, it's a little bit confusing who I am. So my name is Tyler Eglen, and for this presentation, I'm going to be wearing two hats, but telling the same story about my efforts to develop a model of grassroots distributed recycling and the creation of this plastic microfactory. So when I first started this project, I was just a student founder and graduate student at ASU, and I created this club called Precious Plastic at ASU. I'll explain more about that here in a second, but now I'm a project manager associate at the Rob and Melody Walton Sustainability Solution Service, and I'll just call it Walton from here on out. So I graduated from ASU with a Master's of Science in Global Technology and Development just this last August. And that's the thesis work I was working on there is what this project is all about. And while my focus is on plastic recycling, it's important for me to note that this entire project is scoped within a lens of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and improving waste management in the developing world. So I told you I was going to talk about precious plastic, so let's introduce you to that if you've never heard of it. So precious plastic is an international movement aimed at providing normal people with tools, resources, and knowledge to take ownership of plastic waste at the local level by collecting and processing that plastic into new products. So they have lots of resources you can see here on my screen. The major one is these open source machine blueprints. So they actually give you the information you need to make your own processing machines. They have an extensive online community for helping you parts and products that you can buy on their own bazaar, and then educational and marketing material. So it started in the Netherlands, so it's very Eurocentric, but there's a lot of engagement the world over, as you can see on this map. So, and this is both including developed and developing countries. So this really gives evidence that people the world over are looking for better solutions. And it doesn't matter where you are, they're looking for better answers. So like I said, the core of what they provide you with are these open source blueprint plans. So this is kind of the suite of machines that you would want to start out with. So on the far left here, you can see this is a semi-industrial plastic shredder that can shred up to about 100 pounds of plastic an hour. You have an extruder here that's great for making plastic lumber, or you can also attach molds to the end and do similar to an injection molding, but it really is an extrusion molding process. But any mold you can design, you can attach onto this. The most popular ones are like bricks, so you can actually start building walls and very simple structures. And then this final one is a sheet press. So obviously this makes sheets of plastic. They're about 1 meter squared, and these can be used as plywood substitutes. And as we all know, that plastic is very durable, which is both a good and a bad thing. So replacing woods with plastics can be a great way to give a second life to these plastics. So I thought, to ASU, are we already doing something like this, or what are our efforts around zero waste already? So I applied for some funding through their SURF program, which is Sustainability Initiative Revolving Fund, and I was awarded $5,000 to go out and create a student organization and start creating these machines and seeing if we could do plastic processing on campus. Now, before I get too deep into discussing that, I want to go back to the original premise, and that this is all about distributed recycling for the developing world. So college campus in Arizona is not quite the same as developing world. So we all know about the plastic problem. I mean, there's stats here that have been quoted already in this conference, and I'm sure you have all heard a lot. But this last one I want to draw attention to, and this comes from a World Bank estimate that says about 1% of the urban population of developing countries, around 15 million people, work in informal waste collection or as waste pickers. Now that's a lot of people. So people at the, what we would say, bottom of the economic pyramid and the bottom of the flow of plastic, or material flow of plastic, are looking for better answers. And so one of the theorists around this is this guy named Martin Medina. I really encourage you to read this book if you're into informal waste recovery at all, The World's Scavengers. And he said, if we're going to develop new solutions, they need to have these 5 tenets, which are a decentralized and diversified system that has low capital investment, that is non-bureaucratic, informal, and circular. Now, these 5 tenets are quite different from the world of recycling that you and I know. A lot of what we are focusing on is this larger infrastructure and large moving parts. And that reality is just different in developing contexts. So I decided to set out and see if, one, this model that Medina describes is achievable through efforts of the groups like Precious Plastic, and 2, what exactly that looks like, and what are all the inputs that have to be in place, and do the outputs match the expectations? Is it really conceivable? So my first step, as I mentioned, was creating a student organization, and we had 3 major goals. And we wanted to minimize campus waste through community engagement and education. We wanted to create opportunities for students to apply their education to the real world challenge of grassroots distributed recycling. And 3, we wanted to share out those models and knowledge that we created to a greater global community. If we looked at like a kind of basic system map of what we were trying to do, it's easiest if we follow the flow of plastic. So initially we had to find plastic to work with. So collection is where we start. So we decided to start forming partnerships with on-campus players like residence halls, departments. And then we wanted to start holding events and audits so we could look through our plastic waste stream and get an idea of what type of plastics are available, and then start to program what we could do with those. So after we run these collection events, we have dirty plastic. Also, sidebar to this collection, this gives us an opportunity for education and outreach, which is always great for activating more of the community, getting more students involved. So once we have the dirty plastics, we begin processing those plastics. So this entails using those open source machines constructed here at ASU. So we didn't purchase those machines I showed you earlier. We created them from the ground up so that we could shred, we could wash, and we can reform the plastics into new durable goods. So we have all of these worked out, and we're still working on more. We're now increasing our capacity by creating more shredders and more extruders. And then we can already turn that into plastic lumber, which is great, or we can create plastic reflake and then supply that to other plastic processors if they so desire. We haven't done that yet, but that's our thinking where we can go with it. And then the third portion of this is designing products and processes that can actually really use these plastics. And our goal is to not make more waste plastic. So we're defining this as durable goods only, things that are going to have one function for the rest of their usable life, but that could be hundreds of years because we know plastic's going to stick around for a while. These are things like fence posts, outdoor furniture, sporting good products, things like that. And so once we know how this whole process works, we can share that out with the global community and start empowering others out there that are looking for their own solutions. So that was the whole goal. That's what we were trying to do. So let's see where we've kind of been. So with our community audits and events, we invite people at the ASU campus to go through their own trash. So this was with one of the dorms on campus. So we invited the students to bring their trash out. We pulled bins out from the facilities management as well. We set up these events where we can audit and go through and actually itemize and note all the plastics that are coming through. So those are rolling, that's happening. On the machine side, so we have these open source plans. We worked with our engineers, we 3D modeled this, and we created these machines. This is one of my favorite little just animations. This is a very large failed 3D print that was going to get thrown away, and we said, nope, we can reuse those. So after it runs through our shredder, it turns into this plastic flake, and then we can turn that into new products. And this was our very first ever test of injection molding with recycled plastic. This is just a simple little bag clip. So that's not big goals yet, but we are testing our processes. And I mentioned 3D printing. So we also have set up a network, we just call it the Filament Reuse Network at ASU's campus, where we collect failed 3D prints and we turn those back into either filament or into durable goods like the outdoor furniture I had mentioned earlier. Okay, I have a little video of us going through that whole process, but because we're late on time, I'm not going to show all of it. This is just very social network sharing. What I do want to share here is the end. So this is an outdoor stool that we made out of fully recycled 3D filament. You can see it has a great end finish to it. It's very durable. It holds 160-pound Tyler standing on top of it. And it's ready to go, ready to be sold so that we can take what would be 17 pounds of plastic waste and turn it back into a durable good. Okay, some more quick shots of some of the plastic lumber. This is all HDPE. This is polypropylene. You can see the back photo is unprocessed. The front has a little wood tooling on it. So we've processed it so it's a little bit finer. Different shapes we can produce. We can also do injection molding because we're at ASU. We have these large machine capabilities. So this is a mold for a carabiner. You can see our little ASU logo in it. And then it produces this fun promotional product trying to get people interested in what we're doing. So all of that we got rolling. And that's when Walton Sustainability Solutions said, we need to really take this further because this can have major impact at ASU. So we've created what we're calling the Circular Living Lab, where we can really dig into these projects and really take them and test them in a rigorous manner. So Walton has already done tons for circular economy, and many of you in this conference or presenting already have worked with Walton or with ASU. So we said, if we made a full micro factory, what if we could run this whole plastic production process through, from cleaning, collecting, shredding, pressing into new materials? What would that look like? We planned it all out and we started the production process, and we're building that out at Polytechnic right now. So what's really cool is because we're in this campus setting, we have the capacity to do product testing. We can do the full production. We can share our products back to other educational departments, or we can supply it to ASU procurement and sourcing so that they can have a complete circle of plastic reuse right on campus. If we need new desks for design students, we can make those with recycled plastic. So there's a lot of possibility there. But because we're trying to push this further, and because the Walton Sustainability Solutions Service has these outside partners, We can now work with local communities like the Goodwill, like City of Tempe, City of Tucson, and really develop and test this system in a larger setting. And then hopefully, after we can do that at a local level, we can take it international and work on USAID projects, work with other educational institutions that are already out there that we have partnerships with. So that's the large goal of where we're going. I know I'm running out of time here, so I'll skip some of the metrics and some of the numbers and processing because I wanted to get this. Because moving forward, we're going to keep validating our system. But this third point here says the next 5 months, continued local partner development. So I'm reaching out right now to other local partners that either have excess plastics or that are needing plastic products, but they want to source recycled products because we're trying to figure out, can we fill those gaps at the local level right now? So if you're one of those people listening on the call, please reach out to me because we'd love to set up these partnerships and see if we can really validate this small micro factory concept. Here's my information, but then you can contact the conference organizers if you'd also like to reach out further. Thank you very much. I appreciate the extra time.
Well done, Tyler. A lot of good stuff there. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
That's good. All right. Next up, we've got Michael Kazz from Grecycle, Arizona, out of Tucson. So Grecycle has been collecting used cooking oils for over 15 years, and they're going to explain that. So Michael, welcome.
Hello, greetings from Tucson. So today what I'm going to talk to you about is a program we've actually been doing for 17 years. So this has been probably one of the best cases of recycling straight into the feedstock stream for biodiesel. So it's a unique project in that it started in 2005, got actual national media attention, and we partnered with Pima County Wastewater. And what's nice about this project is it's not just recycling and repurposing the material. In this case, it's residential cooking oil, which doesn't get recycled really anywhere. And it's directly using it in biodiesel, which is cleaner for the air. A big feature of this is that it's also pollution prevention. So we're not only taking something and recycling it, but we're taking it off out of the wastewater stream. So what we have here is one of our biggest sponsors, O'Reilly Chevrolet, one of our first and still ongoing collection sites. You can see what's going on here. These are people that are, when we first started out, it was the day after Thanksgiving cooking oil drop because it was a Green Friday message we were trying to convey instead of Black Friday where you shop and consume. So folks here are bringing cooking oil from their home, from their turkey fires, and we're recycling it. Then we refine it at our plant and use it as biodiesel feedstock. So Pima County was tickled to death about this because they were trying to educate people about how to keep people's cooking oils out of the sewers and not flushing the cooking oil down the toilet. So initially we were doing, 4 collection sites. Eventually in January, in January of 2016, we switched to January. The idea being that we're collecting Thanksgiving and holiday cooking oil. So some of our partners have changed over the past 17 years that we've been doing this. We still are doing this along with Pima County, Regional Wastewater Reclamation Department, as well as Jacobs Engineering. Jacobs Engineering runs the outdoor free wastewater plant for Pima County, and we're a big national player in this, which they'd like to see this branch out to community college, City Miami, Rita, Sierra Vista, and others. So here's a picture of where the Arizona Recycling Coalition got involved, because you can see lots of people with lots of little containers with baking fat and grease, as well as people with 5-gallon totes of cooking oil. So the problem was, how do we deal with all these waste containers? It's early morning, January, it's not exactly warm. It takes a lot of time for our volunteers to empty these out. So why of a typical event, probably 8 years ago at O'Reilly Chevrolet, very convenient for people because it was near a shopping mall. And again, our focus is residential recycling. So our various partners that I talked about, it's been very active in Southern Arizona, of course. This is the picture I wanted you to see. So you can see volunteers dealing with a lot of small containers, but every little bit is pollution. In this case, you don't get complaints of glass bottles getting stuck in the drain. Most people don't put these types of things in their drain, but they do put grease down the drain, and that's immediate pollution, and it causes a lot of problems for the WWTP, the wastewater treatment plant. So we received a grant, thankfully, from AzRC to hand these out. And these are little 1 liter, 1 quart metal containers, which are a lot easier to clean out. They're reusable. They're really slick. So we handed about 300 of these out to folks here in Southern Arizona. And it's been working really well so far. So the results, here's our 17-year data history, 16-year data history. As you can see, back in 2005, we had about 1,000 pounds of grease, and it went up a little bit of a dip there in 2013. But even through COVID last year, we had near record-breaking participation. And the big thing here is, again, we're doing really two things here: pollution prevention, keeping this material from being in direct contact with the wastewater system, causing backups, sanitary sewer overflows like this. Believe it or not, day after Thanksgiving, which was our original date, is the biggest day of the year for plumbers. People pour their fats, oils, and greases in the drain instead of properly disposing of them. So it is about recycling, but it's also about educating people that if they can't recycle it, then at least dispose of it. And this was a really nice letter from Jason Rodman at Pima County that says one of the most important key performance indicators of our utility is the prevention of sanitary sewer overflows. These are when the sewers back up and raw sewage goes into our streets and even our homes. So our utility regulates food service facilities such as restaurants, of course, on fats, oil, and grease. However, regulators do not extend to residential customers. Educating those users of how to dispose of these cooking oils is an integral part of the department's goal of reducing sanitary sewer overflows and then total pounds of fog, which is fats, oil, and grease, entering our conveyance and reclamation systems. So in addition to the partnership with Grecycle is a motivating factor for public participation. Program participants love the fact that their used grease will be turned into biodiesel, and that is unique. There's very few places you can go to where you don't have to set up special manufacturing or develop technology to use this glass, plastic, metal. It's right here in Tucson, and it's immediate. So we can take that cooking oil we collect on a Saturday and process it into biodiesel by Monday. So there's very few places that can do that. And most importantly, because we're educating the public on how to recycle locally, we've kept 75,000 pounds of used cooking oil out of the landfill, which again, it's better to put it there than the sewer, but that's the ultimate goal. So this is the grease monster that Pima County has as a mascot, and there'll be different public service announcements. A big thing, if you're a wastewater treatment plant or a county, is you're usually in the bad news. So this back up, the sewer main breaks, they get a lot of back publicity. This is me with Lisa Walsh from Pima County Wastewater. We do TV spots every year, radio spots, different blogs, and we talk about, what is this? Why do we not want to flush this down the drain, and why we can turn it into air-saving biodiesel. And so again, the goal is taking that used cooking oil on the left and refining it into biodiesel on the right. So in conclusion, I think this is probably the only case in recycling where you have a recycling trifecta. What is it? It means you're cleaning the air by making biodiesel the only EPA certified alternative fuel, which over 300 billion gallons are made every year. The only approved fuel for diesel trucks and trains, and for that matter, ocean liners. Water, you're keeping the sewers, and you're keeping the landfills clean. Direct pollution prevention for biodiesel production. So you're educating the public on doing something immediately useful for them to recycle in their own community and use for their own community. And then what's really a big benefit is Pima County and other partners are really excited to do this year after year because they get positive media attention. They get hits on their web pages, on their social media websites, and as well as on TV. So if you're interested, if anybody out there knows somebody in contact with another wastewater treatment plant or county facility that would like to start a program like this, we're available, and we'd be happy to help them with something like this. It's very reproducible and transferable. That's about it. Thank you very much.
That is great information there, Michael. Congratulations on the 75,000 pounds. It's quite a feat for sure. So thank you for that. Next up, we have from Recycled City, JD Hill. JD is co-owner and founder of Recycled City. They're an agricultural business that turns food waste into farmland. So JD, if you're on, it's all yours. Do we have JD?
Yep, I'm here.
There we go. All right. Thank you, JD.
All right, thank you for having me. Our business is Our City. I started the business in 2014. Our motto is farmland for the future. We're turning food waste into farmland. And food loss waste is a major problem for a lot of different reasons. And the EPA has a food waste and loss recovery hierarchy. Our city is implementing source reduction strategies by connecting the farmer to the consumer. And we're reducing surplus food that's grown because the farm is better able to grow for its market. And it reduces spoilage and damage in the supply chain, since the supply chain's shortened so much, basically from farm to directly to your front door. In Maricopa County here in Phoenix, there are organizations working to turn food to feed hungry people. We're implementing some food waste to feed chickens for egg production. There's anaerobic digestion, packaging uses, and finally composting, which is what we do with most of the food waste. And we use 100% of it to regenerate farmland. Our service area is from Peoria to Queen Creek, Avondale to Carefree. So every single family home and multi-family home in this service area can sign up today. The average household's paying about $17 a month to have us collect their food waste from their front door. We have a circular business model. We collect the food waste straight from your front door. We take it to our farm where it's composted. We utilize all the compost to grow vegetables. Those vegetables are then packaged and sold right back to the household that's participating in the food waste program. So every household in this service area can also receive local produce delivery. We've grown. This is a bootstrap business. Back in 2014, when I started, I was in a backyard, and we've grown basically in a linear growth over the last 7 to 8 years. And we really want to work with municipalities, and we think it's reasonable that 10% of households would voluntarily pay for a food waste collection program. And we can save money, $44 per ton landfill rate, 150,000 subscribers is 10% roughly of our service area. The average household that participates in our program is diverting 12 pounds of food waste, napkins, other compostable materials a week. And the present value of this perpetuity is $20 million. So if you take 12 pounds a household a week, 150,000. So at a 10% rate of return, this is, worth a $20 million investment for the municipalities in our service area in general. That'll divert 900 tons a week of food waste, and it's going to support waste diversion goals. A lot of municipalities have these Phoenix food action plans and climate action plans. We also think we can build a resilient food system. So currently total farm sales in Maricopa County, direct to consumers, 17 million a year. And 1.5 million households are roughly in our service area. And we bring local food at affordable prices to every one of them. And we estimate that we can increase direct to consumer sales by 10 million a year. So right now, our city current produce revenue is $5 a month. At 150,000 subscribers, the total produce revenue is $750,000 a month. There's 1.5 million households in our service area. We're going to assume another 1% of the households that don't compost food waste with us are going to spend $5 a month. So that's how we get to the $10 million a year in sales. So we're also not just solving a waste problem, we're solving local food system problems, accessibility to food, farmland loss, farm consolidation, farm profitability. These are all major problems in the local food system, and our model brings a solution to every one of these. The way we're really doing it is we can collect people's food waste buckets and deliver them farm boxes on the same routes. And comparing this program to like a program in Seattle, Seattle's more expensive. It mandates households into a program they won't voluntarily participate in, which creates new problems that are addressed by regulations and policies. So in Seattle, you know, every resident's paying roughly $13 a month for yard and food waste service. But if you want a 96-gallon trash can like here, that's typical in the valley, a 96-gallon trash can, you got to pay $122 a month. So just taking median household incomes, how much, you know, the average household pays for trash collection, you know, households in Seattle are paying way more for waste collection than residents in the Phoenix Valley. So we just said, you know, if everybody was paying $10 a month, which right now our cost for the consumer is $10 to $25 a month. So if every resident in Phoenix paid $10 a month, you know, the resident in Phoenix would be paying $43.20. They'd still have their 96-gallon trash can. And this is what I'm talking about by, you know, you got creating a program that mandates it causes more problems. And then you got to come up with, you know, compost procurement laws because the compost needs to get sold. And you got to come up with solutions for contamination, which Seattle has been doing. So just an overview of kind of like the two differences in the models. Seattle's more expensive. Contamination's a major issue. This model of food waste collection does not build resilience in the local food system, and it requires passing new policies and regulations. So it's dependent on political will. Our model just saves municipalities money. For every resident that signs up with us, it's saving a municipality money. Contamination in our residential food waste collection is not an issue at all. We get very little contamination in the 5-gallon bucket. Our model does build resilience in the local food system by taking local farms and giving them a market to 1.5 million households. So local farms have very poor markets. They sell at farmers markets, CSA drop points. It's very difficult being a local farmer, but this model turns every household in the valley into a potential local food customer, and it makes it very convenient for them because it just comes straight to your front door. And this model does not require passing new policies, regulations, so it's not dependent on political will. And thank you all for your time.
JD, thank you very much. That's, again, some good stuff, and there was a lot of good themes here. So at this time, Erin, if you're there, I'm going to pass it back to her, and then she's going to take care of the Q&A. So if you have a question for any one of the rapid panelists, please fire that away.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. And I'll just start off by noting that Scott did have to jump off. So if you have questions for him, he's really happy to have you email him directly. But if you didn't get his email, we can provide that in the chat. But otherwise, we have the 5 other panelists, and we have 15 minutes, which is great. So the first question is from Becky, and it's for Tucson. And the question is, did I hear correctly that Tucson has 100% CNG solid waste fleet?
Hi, Becky. Yeah, our residential fleet is 100% CNG and most of our commercial. I believe we are like maybe only 1 or 2 trucks that are not CNG.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question is for Tyler, and it's from Leslie. She asked, is there off-gassing from the process? Are the lumber pieces and plywood and slash plastic approved for building materials for codes?
Great question. There's absolutely off-gassing, so volatile organic chemicals are coming off, so we have proper ventilation that's needs to be installed for the machines themselves for the processing. And then for codes, excuse me, we have partnerships, excuse me, with 2 research labs at ASU to help us analyze the materials to see how they would line up against construction codes. The goal is not for them to replace construction materials, but more in furniture, design, products like that. HDPE is flame retardant, but polypropylene is not. It does burn. So then right away, it's not a good construction material. So we don't have the answers yet, but we have the partners to get us all of that regulation moving forward.
Thank you, Tyler. So now I'm going to ask JD 2 questions. The first one is from Terry, and it's what happened to your dreadlocks. And I'll just throw the second one in there as well, in case that answer isn't too long. The second is, are there plans to collect this material via commercial front load trucks in the future? So those are your 2 questions.
So I cut the dreadlocks off like a year ago. It's nice. It's nice not having them anymore. It's nice. For commercial, absolutely. Commercial front loader. Commercial is just a whole nother animal than residential. We're really focused on residential. The majority of our revenue comes from residential. Commercial, there's a lot of issues. We've had to raise prices a lot to get to profitability for our commercial customers. Commercially, right now we use a 60-gallon container and we exchange it with a clean container. We use a box truck with a lift gate and just exchange the containers. So I definitely see possibility for front loading and commercial.
Thank you. And you can send messages in the Q&A or in the chat for any of our speakers. So for Tucson, is energy initiatives measured as part of zero waste? That's from Todd.
I will say that the goal for the city, is zero waste, but it's to meet the climate action emergency. And so we have a really active energy manager as part of our department. And, we are converting solar. We're looking at fleet electrification. Solar will play a big part in that as well. But I don't know that it's part of a zero waste, but it's definitely part of a net zero in terms of carbon footprint.
Thank you, Cristina. So this is from Leslie Fox for JD. Do you give facility and farm tours? Which is a great question. AzRC does like to help facilitate those.
Yeah, I've given private tours. We've never done public tours before, but my information is available. If you don't have it, just send me a message.
Terry's got to be good for at least 3 more questions.
Yeah, I do think we should do a AzRC kind of facilitate tours. We've been really wanted to do some of that in the past, though obviously it's been hard with COVID. I know maybe Terry, you embarrassed Terry at the last event, and I doesn't want to ask questions anymore.
think it's possible to embarrass Terry. Any more questions? I want to definitely thank everyone who's participated in this conference. I think this was an awesome conference. Please check in with Jessica and Erin and anyone on our team as far as any information that you might still be looking for that was presented today that you didn't have an opportunity to capture fully. But, you know, again, I think that I would just say kind of quite confidently that we have a lot of great people in this industry right here in Arizona, a lot of subject matter experts, a lot of innovation, a lot of different options that we should definitely be utilizing together. So again, great content. I'm really, really honored to have been a part of this organization. And look forward to definitely making sure that we keep in touch with everyone and collaborate on more initiatives as we go forward. Last thing that I would just mention is that upcoming, and make sure that if you have grants or scholarships or award nominations or requests, make sure you get those in. Those are due November 1, and we want to make sure that we have ample time to review those and hand those out adequately. And then lastly, be looking for an announcement for our next networking event, and we would ask that you would all participate. And again, just want to thank everyone for the participation, being here today for all of this content, and for everyone who worked really hard to put this together. So great job, everyone. Thank you.
And we do, Todd, have 2 more questions. So,
great.
Well, since we have the time. Yeah, well, I was gonna say, you know, people can sign off if they need to, but if not, we can use the remainder of this time as questions do trickle in, because I know it can take a while to think of them. So for Recycled City, Mark asked, can you accept produced waste from a digester system installed in a grocery store? JD still here.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, sorry about that. Didn't clarify.
Okay.
Yeah, so can you accept produce waste for a digester from a digester system installed
No.
in a grocery store? Okay.
No. So the only food waste we deal with is what we collect.
Okay, and then your other question is, do you offer virtual tours?
Yes.
And then maybe a final question here, Todd. I don't know if you want to take this one. It's from Terry, and it's, what's the agenda for AzRC for the next year? So I know we talked about grants, but
grant scholarships, we want to make sure that we're increasing our activity. Obviously we've had a great impact with the pandemic as far as how to measure how to put together the events. We did a live event, I think it was a month and a half ago, the Glass Packaging Institute. It was again a successful event. It was great. Certainly this conference. So part of that is measuring how we are able to collaborate, more participation with member meetings, and then more emphasis on this kind of content, in my view. How are we that one-stop shop? How are we getting information to all of those in the industry? We talked about having policy initiatives, the descriptions and what they might mean, definitions that you might not, it take you some research to get to. So we're working on having that available where you can just come to us, come to our website, and then we can provide that information to you that will be beneficial for the application of your business. So we're looking to be, you know, kind of your one-stop shop in the industry, not just recycling, but waste diversion as a whole. As you saw today, it was actually probably from a percentage standpoint, less recycling conversation, more waste diversion, and what do we do in a bigger scale to have an impact from economically and environmentally as a whole. So that's kind of my long-winded answer. I would throw some kind of math percentage in there, but I was never good at numbers. Thank you for the question, Terry. Appreciate that.
Okay, and I think that's all the questions are answered, so.
Okay, great. Again, I just want to thank everyone. This was awesome. So great information also. anything else that we can do to highlight as well, please reach out to us, let us know, and we certainly look forward to collaborating more in the future. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you to our speakers and attendees and all the great questions. So.